Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show where we take a peek into the hearts and lives of our favorite artists. From running a creative business and practice to mindset, we talk about everything that goes behind into making a life and a career that you adore as an artist. Think of this as your happy hour with your favorite artist in your studio. Hear them share the messy and the wonderful side of creating and living a creative, heartfelt life within and outside our studios. As you tune in, be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, and the founder of Arts to Hearts project.
And I'm Svetlana Martinyuk, founder and CEO of All She Makes.
We are here today to share an amazing announcement with you.
This is an online exhibit highlighting women artists and their perspectives.
Perfect. So Arts to Hearts and All She Makes. Yes, Arts to Hearts and All She Makes are coming together. We are opening an open call for all women artists. The theme for this open call is gaze. We are calling out for all women artists. All She Makes and Arts to Hearts share a common goal to provide women inclusive space and a platform to showcase their work and raise their voice. So we figured that we wanted to hear more stories, more perspectives of what a gaze means to you. So we are calling out any women who has felt as the other one and uses that as a part of their practice in their work. The open call runs from 20th June to 20th July. The selected participants will be a part of an online exhibit on www.arts2heartsproject.com. Not only that,
but we will also select a few artists to join us in our next issue of All She Makes magazine.
And we will also be doing a video documentary with the selected artists. This exhibit will be curated by Svetlana herself. Look through all your work, and I'm really excited for this collaboration. So if you're interested, you can go to www.arts2heartsproject.com. Yes, and you can find all the details, and we look forward to your submissions. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. This is your host, Charuka Arora. Okay, today we have a very, very exciting guest because I'm a big fan of her work and everything that she does. And I am sure that each one of you who are listening are just like me. So I would not delay this too much, and I want to introduce to you Sari Shryack. Welcome to the podcast, Sari.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. I think even in the beginning of our call, I just said that I'm obsessed with your work. I've been a big fan of your work, and it is definitely an honor to have you here today with me. So thank you for coming. I'm sure the listeners who are listening to this right now would be as excited as I am recording this right now.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. No, I'm really excited to be here and, share what I can and connect to your community. And it's been really fun to watch grow on Instagram. I've seen you grow so much and yeah, just excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Okay, before we begin into the episode, I'm sure most of us know you, but just for the sake of it, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I am a painter based out of Austin, Texas. And I do mostly acrylic and oil paintings. And it's really hard to pin down a subject. I think that's kind of like maybe one of my more defining traits is that I sort of paint a little bit of everything. But yeah, I do a lot of landscapes. I'm playing with portrait. And I've really plugged into Instagram. I think that's another predominant feature in my work. I use Instagram kind of like a journal.
Absolutely.
And so I do a lot of like captions and really interacting and, that's kind of my home base. So I share a lot of my work there.
Perfect. Of course, we have to talk about all the new work that you've been doing because, of course, you were doing a lot of landscapes in the beginning, but now, ever since you've been doing more of still lifes, more of portraits, and I really want to talk about all of that. Not so sorry, art school, and of course, Instagram. But before we go into all of that, let's begin from the beginning. Where were you born? How did you spend your time as a kid?
Yeah, so I was born in Springfield, Missouri, which is like a small town in the Ozarks. It's just like a very country area. And yeah, I was always pretty artsy. I didn't have any really formal training until college. I think I grew up pretty poor, and kind of to what you were saying earlier, I was dyslexic, and I was an okay student. I was either really good at stuff or really awful, and so I always gravitated towards art. When you have a hard time communicating, sometimes I feel like words kind of let you down, and I always felt like painting and drawing and playing with fashion and makeup and hair was always like the easiest way for me to get an idea out. So I've just been like loosely artsy. But I was in high school, I was a student athlete. I was a runner. I'm not very like sportsy, but I really loved running and I was really good at it. And at least good enough to get a running scholarship. And that's how I was able to go to college. I was able to go on full ride, or else I
Wow.
don't know that I would have been able to go to college. And I had the reason I went for an art degree, because it wasn't my main love at the time. I was working a part-time job and running and I was really into like politics. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be like poli sci.
Oh,
I'm going
wow.
to change the world. Like, poverty is hard. And so I was like really young and wanting to
Yeah.
like fix everything. But then I got into school and kind of going back to like the dyslexia thing, college really was really hard academically. And so I switched to a major. It wasn't so much that it was easier, but it was just like the way, it was a little less paper intensive. And I had a painting professor who I like was in love with. And his whole thing
Yeah.
was like, if you do the work, you'll get good grades. And that's exactly what I needed. I was a hard worker, but I really struggled in school. And so, yeah. And then I fell in love with art. His philosophy on art was really welcoming and like anyone can be an artist and there's no such thing as talent. It's all about effort and interest. And that just really lit a fire in me. And he gave me like a visual language that I could, like I said earlier, words just like let me down. And so I was able to develop kind of this like skill to be able to draw and paint representationally. And it was like the best gift ever because, when I graduated, I took a little bit of a break, but I rediscovered art in my postpartum. And it's just been like my second language ever since. And I love it. So.
Love that. Love that. Did you ever think that you would be an artist, like ever remotely before coming close to this?
Not really. As a kid, I wanted to be like a singer. I wanted to be Beyonce and Britney Spears, and I wanted to be a mom, and I didn't want to be in poverty, but
Wow.
I never really thought like an artist. I think I hoped to be those things, and I sort of didn't, the class that I came from, it's everyone like, yeah, I mean, sure, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, but most of my peers and my friends' parents, they were laborers. They worked in warehouses, and if you were lucky, maybe you were a CNA or something. But um, so I think all of us played with the idea of jobs, but it wasn't ever really practical. And it wasn't until I was in college that I was like, oh, I might be something other than a fast food worker. I could be like a graphic designer or something. And like, it wasn't until I was in college, so like 20, that I was like, oh, I'm going to have a real job. Not to say those other jobs aren't real, but just valued, I suppose, by our culture.
Of course.
But yeah, it wasn't until, I don't think I really even realized that I was doing it as an artist until I was like literally bringing the money in and going, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing the dang thing. I don't think there was a lot of forethought until I was, I guess.
Where did you have your creative influences from? Did you have anyone in your family who was remotely, relatively creative, or someone who encouraged your creativity?
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Yeah, good question. And I've done a handful of podcasts and I always get this question, and like the short answer is no, like not really, in the sense that like, my dad did drywall until he injured his back, and my mom worked in a warehouse and like didn't get to be an artist, and all my grandparents had similar jobs, and so like no one was an artist. But then I think about it, and it's kind of not fair to just write that
Yeah.
off because they're careers. No one had creative careers.
Yeah.
But there's two things. One,
Yeah.
poverty breeds um, innovation, and you have to be creative to survive at the bottom. Like, people in my family were always sort of
Yeah.
like, learning how to fix a car on the fly, or, just all kinds of things, like, making furniture out of pallets and just getting by. And the thing that sort of, the other thing that kind of comes to mind is when I was a kid, one of the things I spent a long time doing with my mom was thrift shopping. So it was kind of before fast fashion had really taken off. And so like in order to be dressed, we had to go to thrift stores. And so we would spend hours going through the aisles and looking for
Yeah.
clothes, and we would patch things and fix things. My mom really taught me about silhouette and patterns and how you can pull colors from patterns and matching with solids. And, these things all kind of seem arbitrary, but we spent a lot of time and effort, especially the women in my family, looking nice despite kind of
Yeah.
not having anything. And I really want to like
Yeah.
honor that, because I think that's not a common narrative. Like most people, like their parents are architects or something. But like for me, that was, my mom worked at a warehouse, but we spent a lot of our free time together exploring how to present and how to polish and look beautiful, and having to be really creative in how we did that. And so I look back and I think a lot of my like creative instincts came from like thrift stores.
I love that. And honestly, I can relate to that myself because, of course, I grew up in India and we grew up okay. And I remember, like, my mom, she was obsessed with fashion even till today. Like, she would go to every store, like, visit everything, and she wouldn't care. Even if the world was ending, anything and everything she wanted was another pair of clothing.
Oh,
And I remember I would spend time with her, and we would go to these markets, the local stores, thrift stores, and thrift raw materials. Then we would go to the markets and get those embellishments. I think that is where my love for embellishment started. And we would make, like, I saw her making her own clothes, and going to places and getting them stitched. And like, those, I think those were the real influences and the real learnings that even helped me today, because I saw her taking instant creative decisions even when she did not even have like a creative job, but she
yeah.
was immensely creative. And I think that's how it impacts so much to us.
Absolutely, and that's totally valid. I don't know, I think we're moving away from it, but for a long time, I feel like people overly identified with their career and, like, really sort of didn't talk about the other parts of living their life, which is such a shame because it really kind of a lot of people don't have the luxury
Yeah.
to be able to have a creative career, and then I see them write themselves off as, like, not artists or not creative because they have, like, a desk job or a labor job. And that's just so unfortunate because like my mom passed on so much creative knowledge to me, and it was just through like surviving and being generally creative, not her job. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and actually, I think even in at a point where the internet was not as good as it is today, we still, I think, I owe a lot of my career to the internet, because I'm sitting across the world on a different corner, and I get to talk to all of you. I have these amazing, beautiful friends, uh, people that inspire me, people that I get to work with, and make a career that I love. And they did not even had that chance, because they had to bring the table on food on the table, and it had to be done in certain limitations without the internet that we don't have today.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, how did your love affair with the arts begin? Actually, what was your that first moment where you felt like, okay, I can do this, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, it happened kind of in different stages. I remember, so I started my account, and that was kind of my like art, the beginning of my art career, I guess, if you want to say. After about a year and a half break from college. So I graduated from college in May of 2014. And then I took a year and a half off, kind of like a mental health break, unintentional, but I took some time off. And I really wanted to restart. With my art because I loved it so much in college. And so I started kind of an anonymous little Instagram account. I didn't share it with anyone. And I started a 100-day drawing prompt. So just like drawing something random every single day, just for accountability. I had made really beautiful work in college. I was really proud of. And the few times that I would try to start up during that like break, I was really disappointed. And so it was a super like low pressure. I'm just going to draw and not care what anyone thinks and just do it and just exercise. And anyways, it was probably about a year in, I started kind of feeling like I was getting a groove back, like my style was kind of coming back. And at that point, I had sold a handful of paintings on Etsy. And of course, this is like miles away from having like a full art career, whatever that means. And I sort of thought, okay, well, maybe I can make this
Yeah.
as like a part-time job because I had a baby at the time. I started my account 2 months after I had a baby. And so I was like, okay, well, this will be a
Wow.
good like part-time mom thing. Like I can do this and make money to,
Yeah.
to buy art supplies at the least. And that
Super.
felt like a victory. Like I was like, wow, that's so amazing. I can't believe I can do this. And then the next victory was sort of like a couple years later, maybe in 2017, early 2018. I had gotten a show through a residency. And I was starting to sell like enough that felt like a part-time income, like a legit, $20,000 a year kind of a thing. And I was like, okay, this is a part-time
Wow.
job. And that felt like, a breakthrough moment. And then, gosh, maybe about a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic, it started to feel like a full-time job. Like I started, my husband, I recruited him to help. I hired an assistant, and we crunched the numbers, and all of a sudden, once again, we hit a moment where I was like, oh, this is a real job. So like, it's funny because I've never had like goals other than to like make good artwork. And then the business side is always sort of just like followed. And it's not to say that I haven't been intentional with anything, but I think the only thing I've had really clear in my mind is that like I want to have a job I can do with my kids, and most importantly, I want to make art that I'm really proud of. And I think that's how I kind of stumbled into this as a career.
Oh, love that. Love that. Okay. Um, Now that, okay, there are, of course, there are several parts to this conversation. When did you actually start your first account on Instagram?
January 1st, 2016.
2016, and we are sitting,
Yes.
yeah, 2016, and here we are in 2021. I'm sure it's not, of course, a small time, but you've literally blown up on Instagram, on internet, be it Pinterest. Your work is everywhere. It's literally everywhere. Um, I remember one day I was just scrolling through some of my really old Pinterest boards, and I had this painting by one of your work that now I recognize as yours, pinned as an inspiration. And I was like, I pinned this years ago, and um, you know, I know now today that is your work. And you've literally created a huge community for yourself, a huge audience that you've built for yourself. How has that journey been for you, and what has been the role of Instagram for you in this journey?
Yeah, Instagram has been really helpful. So I graduated, like I said, in 2014, and my painting professor, who's like kind of more like a mentor now, right when we were leaving school, he was like, okay, so, he gave us this stat that was like less than 5% of studio art graduates have a full-time studio career after graduation, which is, I mean, that sounds pretty dismal. And I remember being really kind
So
of
far,
upset by
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's really sad. And, I remember thinking, okay, so I have to move to like New York or LA or some big like global city. And like pound pavement and like show my portfolio. That's the only way to do it. And then my husband and I moved to Austin, which isn't tiny, but it's more of a tertiary city. And there's no art. I mean, not no art, let me say. There's a very small art scene here. It wasn't anything like New York. And I was like, and I had a baby, an unplanned, but very, I'm very happy baby. And so the idea of going to a big city and pounding pavement and meeting people and doing the traditional art thing was like off the table. And I remember being so frustrated because I was like, okay, I've like worked really hard. I worked in college. I was an athlete. I worked really hard in my art. I've escaped poverty. I've done all the work, and like what's going to stop me from making art, getting being able to paint is just because I'm not in a big city. Like it just felt totally unfair, and I remember being like really moved by that energy. It was just seemed so unfair. So I looked, and I had an app, and I was posting, I had it for personal reasons. I was posting all throughout college, just like pictures of my lunch and just random stuff. And I was like, I wonder if I posted art and like had a separate account, if that would take off. And of course, this was in like, 2016, like some people were starting to take Instagram kind of seriously, like people were selling through it.
Yeah,
And I remember thinking,
yeah.
okay, if I just put all of my energy that I would be spending pounding pavement into this, if I painted every day, if I reached out to people, if I reached out to galleries, if I just sunk my teeth into this, if like that could make up for the fact that I don't have access to like the traditional art route. And, you know, it was a long game. It definitely didn't happen at first. And it wasn't like my singular goal, but I sort of just took it on like my full-time job way before it paid, way before it paid. And that's I think how I built. And it's so funny that like you say that like my art's everywhere and like and it's wonderful and I think it really attracts the right people to you. But my goal was always like more to like make it in the more traditional sense. And I just think it's so like ironic and like I don't know,
Yeah,
just that I would make it more as like an internet, you know, artist than a
absolutely.
traditional artist.
So yeah, this is another very important conversation, and I think it's not only you or me. I think there's so many of us. I think majority of us go through this. I remember when I was entering into the arts and I was just trying to absorb information and learn the things, the technology, like the terms and everything. I remember someone asking me the question that what kind of artist you want to become? Do you want to become an artist or do you want to become an Instagram artist? Um, I was extremely uncomfortable with this question. And if I be 100% honest, I said I wanted to be an artist because the perception that was built around this was that, if you're on Instagram, even if you're doing great on Instagram or on your own or something, I don't know, you're not enough. You're not enough of an artist. And I fed that to myself for so long. I would refrain, even when I wanted to do something, I would refrain myself because I would be like, okay, if I'm sharing too much, I wouldn't be enough of an artist. If I'm doing this, the traditional way, you want to be more secretive, you want to be more like, you need to have those boundaries and all of those things. How has I mean, you are like an inspiration for all of us because you've made it. You're just not doing it via the platform or online. You've literally made it. You run your own art business, but you also have not so sorry art school, and you've all of that is via the internet. How
Mhm.
has that been for you? I mean, this is something I would love to know. Have you faced these traditional versus the online artists? How has your imposter been throughout this journey?
Oh yeah, totally. No, I know. I mean, I know there's people who don't consider what I do art. But you know, I it that's not true. So it doesn't bother me too much. You know, it's honestly this is going to sound like
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
overconfident, but it's their loss. You know, you don't have to like my art. Not everyone does, and that's totally fine. But if you don't like my art because of the platform I'm using, because I'm, you know, I'm doing the best I can in the year 2021, then that's kind of your ego trap. And like, what a bummer, because I make really cool art and I share a lot of process and I share insight. And I certainly think that that's valuable. So, you know, I try not to think about it too much. And, you know, I do know that people, you know, I'll have, they're so sweet, but I'll have like college students reach out to me or like art school students and they're like, I love you. I want to write a paper on your artwork. But my professor thinks that you're not a real artist. What do I tell him? And I'm always, it's always so funny. And I'm just like, I
Oh
wish I
my
had
God.
the answer for you, but I don't. um, no, but like
That is so, so sad.
oh, it doesn't hurt my feelings
That
at
is
all.
so sad because I think, no, I mean, it not only for you, how I think these perceptions don't only, like, they're not only harming someone who's doing it, but it's closing doors for so many who want to do it. I think I can say it for myself. When I see you doing so good, the only thing that comes to my mind is that I see you killing it. I feel like if she can, so can I, because it just inspires you that someone has paved that path for her own self. And if one person can do, so can others. And this thought process of not being valid enough, I still know it. I don't know how it happens in the US, but I have so many friends here in the art school. I know so many students here, and most of them are not taught technology the way it should. At least that's so I believe. Most of them don't even know how to use Photoshop. They don't even know how to have basic marketing skills. I'm not even talking about anything. I'm just saying, how to put together a launch, a series launch, or a website, or very basic skills that are needed today. And most of them are only taught that they need to make art, and they end up being confused and handicapped because they don't know how to move forward in the real world then.
Yeah, no, it's so unfortunate because, I had a really good painting professor and he taught me how to paint, but I had no marketing classes, business classes. Truly, the tools that helped me in the kind of sales marketing department, which it's funny because I really think of it in my mind more as like just like the survival department, but is my childhood where I had to be so creative to like survive, and I watched my parents be creative to survive, and then also like working customer service at like fast food jobs. Like I sort of keyed into those things, and
Yeah.
that's how I was able to like monetize and make it a business. The thing is, I love art so much, and I want to be able to do it like forever. And so I sort of sat down. I didn't, we don't have wealthy parents. Like my husband and I, he's a writer, and so like we sort of were like, if we're going to make this in the art, like this can't be a place where you're hemorrhaging money. And the weird thing is that traditional art world, they kind of create no space for like, kind of like what you were saying at the beginning, like there's no space for anyone in the middle. You either have to be like super wealthy, like trust
Yeah.
fund kid, and like it makes sense for you to romp around for 5 years just making whatever you feel and not worrying about selling, or they want you to like be a starving artist. And I think that's just so like exploitative and weird. And for me, it was like more than like wanting to be like, a girl boss or any, I just wanted to like make enough money that I could do it and like
Yeah.
make sense that I would be spending 4 or 5 hours a day painting. And so I think that's kind of where like the business acumen came in. It was just, what do I need? How do I need to sell? What do I need to do to be able to keep painting, forever? So, yeah.
I absolutely love that. And honestly, I said the same thing to me. There was a period in my life when I was here and I was doing like, I came from the design background, so I actually knew everything. I knew a lot of basic of marketing. I knew design. I knew all these softwares. I knew basics of social media. But to the contrary, I never used all of those skills into my art career for in the beginning for some time, because I was ashamed of these skill sets, because the word was commercial and I did not want to be that. I wanted to fit in so bad that I had to put all those skills behind me so that I could be an artist. And I thought, if those come honest, I haven't said this on the podcast, but for a long time I actually stopped calling myself a designer. And
Oh.
I still know so many people who wouldn't call me an artist and would call me a designer, because I did not come from an art school, or because I maybe am more tech savvy, or like all of those things. And I remember, I came to a point where I felt like, I just can't sail in two boats. I need to make money. I need to pay my bills. There's nobody else going to pay those bills for me. And I want to do this creatively. I want to be an artist, and I want my art to do this for me. And if to do that, I need to make money. And if that means I have to be on my own, and if that means I have to use all those skill sets that I absolutely love and I'm not ashamed of, I'm going to go do that. And the whole idea that, to give someone the control of your own career, I think what I absolutely love about being independent artist, especially artists on the internet today, is that we have a control of where we are and we don't have to be dependent on someone else. Galleries are great. There's no harm, but we still get to make a choice that we can be on our own, and we can take a charge of where we want to be, how many businesses we want to own, how many art we want to make, what kind of art we want to make. And I mean, did you feel that, while you were transitioning into this age of internet, did you feel that liberty in your own art career?
Yeah, it's funny because it's the same thing. It's what you're saying, the freedom. But in the beginning, when that freedom is often shamed and, and it can be overwhelming, like how do you even begin to make money? It feels scary. It feels like you want someone to take you up and to show you and to, represent you, because like you feel like you don't know what you're doing or you're going to make a mistake. But I think when I grew up a little bit, more in my late 20s, I sort of realized, especially I look a lot towards like musicians. I feel like music and visual arts are like sisters, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
the way that business is run, I would be really depressed if that's how the art world, is run. Like, having these sketchy business deals when you're 16. And, I started to all of a sudden realize that the freedom didn't have to be stifling, that it could be just that. It could be freeing. And the way you choose to run your business, because you have complete control, can be an extension of your creativity. You can choose to sell on, I don't know, coasters and pop sockets and phone cases, if that fits your brand and your ideas and kind of is an extension of your art. If you're talking about commodity and mass consumer culture, then like that can be an extension of your art. And for me, it's different things, like the teaching, that felt very right and true to me. And to force everyone in the creative field to be a teacher would be unfair and crazy. But for me, it's a wonderful natural extension. And so when I realized that like that freedom it's a good thing. It's scary at first, and no one writes a guidebook on how to like survive as an artist nowadays. I mean, people do. I guess that's not true, but it's not always clear. At least there was in 2016. I don't know. But, I sort of maximalized on that. And I think when I realized that it was a good thing is when like things started clicking for me. And it's not to say that it's not still challenging, and you have to pivot and, grow in ways. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good thing. It's overwhelming when you're young and new.
100%. And I think another challenge with being an artist in our time now, in the 21st century age of the internet, let's say, is that it's ever evolving. We need to keep adapting, like, because everything is so dynamic today. Every something new that happens, there's another like, you need to be constantly proactive and updated and be creative, not just in making art but thinking like an artist. Like, even running a business is a form of art. Like, you have to be creative, you have to communicate what you want. And I think that's another one of the most challenging things that is for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's so tough because like, you know, I think there needs to be space for retraction, kind of in our financial system, capitalism, there's this like need and desire. I mean, it's a need to constantly be growing and evolving. And I think as people, we grow and evolve, but it's less linear, and it's like more of like ebbing and flowing.
Yeah.
And sometimes capitalism doesn't really support that, which is, I don't have an answer for that other than to say that that's something I'm currently thinking through. And that's like, I'm trying to figure out how I can weave that into what I do. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a challenge. But I mean, kind of to the underlying point of your whole podcast is like, that's the beauty of having this community, and like we can share that with each other. And I'm at a
Yeah.
place where like financially I have some room and some space to contract, and so I'm trying to figure out how I can pass on information to my people who are maybe a step behind me, or like just trying to help each other out. And
Yeah,
it's tough.
absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your work now.
Sure.
You you've been making landscapes for a long time, but of late you've been experimenting a lot. I have been obsessed with your still lives that you've been doing. The one that you were doing with those, the pearls, the seashells, the mirrors, and it literally felt like I was transported. Your work definitely transports me into another zone.
Mm.
But I think I was able to relate to that even more because in the part of world that I grew, we did not have like so much of green landscapes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but the still lives that you did, I felt like, as kids we used to play with those sets and the Barbies, and like it's just, I love those. How has that transition been for you, and what really inspires you to make art?
Gosh. Oh man, everything. I never know how to answer all these years, and I still don't know how to answer this question. It's everything. I feel like, so just to give you some, like, my personal life is incredibly boring. Like, I have 2 babies, and like I feel like we live like a really nice version of Groundhog Day every day. Like, everything's the same. And so I get to like experiment and play through my art. And so what I paint and what I'm inspired by is pretty varied. Like, it's really pretty different. And I think, for me, like, I experience the world through my art. And so I really like having that, a changing variety of things. So landscape initially was because I went to college and I was running a lot, and landscapes were nice because I painted them really large, and it was almost like I was creating like my own world. I think like the idea of like creating your own world and spaces and escape has kind of always been something I've been interested in. And I just like to paint architectural landscape. I think that was as simple as that was. And when I moved to Austin, I was super motivated by everything here is a little bit more tropical than where I'm from. I mean, tropical's an exaggeration, but there's agaves and palm trees and, and so I was really excited by the colors here, like how the sky is more like phthalo blue here and it's more ultramarine back in Missouri. Like it kind of blew my mind. I'm not well traveled, so like it was just wild. Um, and what happened was we moved, we were priced out of our little apartment in downtown Austin or central Austin. And we moved out to like a brand new, like it was a rental, but it was a brand new subdivision and it had like no trees and like no soul. And it was very like I was very fortunate to have a home. So I'm not trying to like, but it was very creatively
Yeah.
stifling. And I had a baby that I was having to walk with. And so like driving into town like didn't really work. And so I had kind of like this crisis moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, the thing I love to paint is kind of like not accessible to me anymore. And I was really having a hard time. And I remember I was unpacking groceries. I'd been painting fruit and stuff on and off just because like painting fruit was a very artist trope. But I was painting fruit and then I unbagged my groceries and like the light was hitting it. And I love direct light. Like that's ever since college, that's been like my big theme. Like and there's no real reason other than like, I just love that warm, cool dynamic. It's just lights up my brain. And I was unpacking groceries and the light was hitting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can make like stories and narratives and like landscapes even with still life. And so I started with like my grocery items. So like cut up, watermelon and tea and pastries and things like that. And all of a sudden, like still life kind of became this thing where I was like, I can do actually quite a bit with still life. And the thinking behind that is, still life is, I always feel like on the hierarchy of what you can paint, still life has always been pretty low on the hierarchy as far as like how important or relevant it is. But it's weird because like the 21st century, it's like we are so consumed with goods and things. Like you can't drive on a highway, at least in America, without seeing like storage units everywhere. We all have so much stuff. And so telling stories about people and things and times of your life with items, like people look at it and they're like, oh yeah, third grade, that was the body spray. And I know girls who wore that were kind of like this. And, a lot of memes and stuff are like, for a while there, like starter packs were really fun. And basically it was just saying like, people with this kind of stuff are these kind of people. It's conflating. But anyways, and so like there is cultural shorthand and precedent for objects telling bigger, larger, deeper stories. And I think that's really interesting for a lot of reasons. But also because like, I think it's wild that like you live in India and you can see my teenage still lifes and it connects with you. Like what other time in history could you connect with so many people? I think, it's not all like a good thing. I mean, part of it is because of like capitalism and mass, supply. And obviously that's not always a good story, but I think it's really interesting. And it kind of speaks to where we are as a culture. When people look back at my still lifes, it's not going to have the same context because it is really, they're love letters to like anyone who was a teenage girl in my time. Like, it's really specific and yet it's really broad. And so it just lights up my mind. I just love still life for that reason.
I think I am obsessed with all of those works, and I think they also capture that innocence and that carefreeness because as a little girl, all of us have mostly been obsessed with all of those, the lipsticks, the you know you don't have the pressure of being, are you too girly or you're not girly. At least I'm speaking for myself because I think with this constant strife that if you're too girly then you're weak, and you could you put it, you let's say you put it into a certain category. And I felt that at some point I wanted to retract from that because I, even if I like too much pink, I wouldn't confess that because I didn't want to be into that box and I wanted to be in another box. And the moment I see your work, and I think it just comforts that part of my soul that that this is a part of me, who I am, and I don't have to be a part of a definition what people have put for us. I can be as strong a girl boss if I have to, and I can still be soft, I can still be girly and
Yes,
everything else. So I think
absolutely.
that is, I think, primary why I love that series so much.
Yeah, and that's totally intentional. There's a lot, you know, I don't want to, I never want to like bore people with my comments and over explain. I think there's a lot of like, I don't mind teaching and sharing my methods and stuff, but I always am like, I try to not over explain what I'm doing with like my themes and stuff
Yeah,
because, especially when you're speaking to such a wide audience like on the internet and you have a global audience, like I think people
yeah,
can really get different things. But that's the series that like my teenage girl series like is the series that keeps on giving. Like there's that femininity that you're talking about and like I go through the stores and I look back at my childhood and I always am so baffled at like the stuff that's marketed towards girls, and it's not like there's like I have like a message behind that. It's just that like it's little girl high heels and little girl lipstick, and so it's this weird like you're not taken seriously if you like things that are pink and fluffy, but we're going to give you pink and fluffy things that are like you're supposed to take on to present womanhood and to show that you're grown. I think it's interesting that like
yeah,
you can use the term girl on women, pretty much their whole lives, and boyhood is really confined to like,
yeah,
20s and under. And I don't have like a one dimensional meaning behind those, but I just think there's so
yeah.
much to explore with girlhood. And I think it's because girlhood is just not taken seriously. Like I can remember when I first started doing the teenage girl series, it was right in my Instagram art career, whatever, that you were that I was thinking like I want to be taken seriously, and I was applying for a ton of like upscale magazines and getting rejected and rejected. And I remember when I was doing the series, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the nail in the coffin. Like I'm never going to get taken seriously as an artist if I do a still life series about teenage girl items. And I mean that's been fairly truthful, but the fact that it connects with so many people and so many girls, and like there's so many dimensional ways to sort of turn that series around on its head. Like I don't care that it'll never get shown. I think it's just an important thing to talk about and
Yeah,
like connect to, and the fact that you connect, like that just makes me so happy.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think that once you're saying that, you also have raised another very important point. Um, the ironical, like the irony of a situation where the entire point of art is to communicate, like to connect with. We all make art because we want to connect with people. We want to. There's a message. Anything. It's not only a message. We want to communicate that's within us, and I, as a consumer, as an onlooker, find something that connects to me. And when you're making that series because you connect to it, I'm connecting to it because I can relate. And like you said, most like a majority, you've got great response with that. But the whole system in place, the one who's sitting in between, um, has, like, they have become this barrier in between, who decide, okay, even when the audience accepts that, they're the ones who are deciding, okay, um, this isn't enough, or this is enough.
Hmm. Yeah, no, tastemakers. I totally, yeah. It's something I think about a lot. I mean, I try to keep myself pretty detached from that conversation because like as an artist, it's easy to like get your ego really trapped in that.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I think, like you said, the point is to connect to an audience. And like for a long time in the art world, you needed those tastemakers to get your artwork seen. And so you had to play this game where you're like appealing to them and then also like subversing messages to your audience. And like that was so hard. Like I don't have to do that now. I can just speak to my audience. And I feel like because
audience.
and if it bypasses, older crusty men, like I don't care. I just at the end of the day, I don't care.
I love that. I love that. And I think all of us, more and more of us, need to have that spirit. And I'm sure you are an inspiration for so many of us. So thank you for doing all of that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, another addition to that, to this beautiful journey of yours that you did during this pandemic, which is the Not So Sorry Art School.
Hmm.
Um, can you talk about that journey?
Sure. Yeah. So,
I've seen you talk about that, and I know it's not been a linear path. Especially in our own community, there's been a lot of conversation about being an artist and also being a coach, or maybe adding more roles to your creative career. It's definitely not a linear decision and not an easy decision. Uh, how did you land up here, and how has your experience been so far?
Yeah, it's definitely not been linear. The kind of the genesis of the school, the like short story, is when I started getting some traction on Instagram, people were asking, "How did you make that?" That's a pretty common question. And I
Yeah.
definitely had the sensation of like, "Oh yeah, I'll help you." Like there was no like weird like this is mysterious. It's secretive to me because my teacher had been so generous. Like, and I know like you pay for that when you go to school, but like his whole like approach had been like anyone can learn to paint. You just have to know these basic tenets of how to look at things, and then you got it. And so I was, my thinking was like, oh yeah, I'll share this with you. Like if this helps you paint, like great, more, wonderful. And I was at a place where I didn't have the time to really teach, but I would show people my step-by-step processes. So I would take a paint, a photo at every step and share it, and those were really helpful. And
Mm.
for a while, that's kind of all I could do to meet that need. And then I sort of thought about it, and I started doing in person workshops. That seemed pretty natural. And then when the pandemic hit, kind of kicked me in the pants to finally get on my online workshop. But, kind of to what you were saying. So that's how Not Sorry Art School started. But to your point of like why there was so much resistance and why
Yeah.
it's so difficult, because if it wasn't for the exterior world, it is pretty linear and it is pretty easy. It was an easy decision. Like I definitely have the desire to teach people. But the resistance comes from I think a couple of myths in the art world. And one of them is that like somehow if you share your process or how you do things, like you're devaluing it. Like it's this weird thinking that like if you share it like lessens. I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure you've picked up on it. And I didn't understand that because I think I was lucky
Yeah.
that my painting professor,
100%.
yeah, so weird. My painting professor, he was a teacher full time, and he also showed in Europe and like, showing artwork all over the world and always had his art in galleries and was doing multiple projects at any given time. And so my first example of a real artist, because he was my first example, was, oh yeah, you can do both. And they actually fit well together. And then, I sort of heard these murmurings in the art world of like, wow, thank you for being so generous. I can't believe you're sharing that. I was like, what is this weird? Like, I just didn't, I mean, it wasn't that cut and dry, but I didn't realize until I was really launching it that there was so much, I don't know, hesitation. And I think some of that is boundaries. Like you're like, okay, well, if I start teaching, is it going to detract from my personal work? But I've always had really good boundaries with like, I've had to with social media or else you'd go crazy. And so I was like, well, I'll share what I can and then I'll stop when I'm done. And, that's never been that much of an issue. But I've been thinking about it more recently since I've had like this full Not Sorry Art School thing. And it's a really big part of like my income and my career. But there's also kind of this weird idea that like, so I mean, I don't know how it is in India, but at least in the West, there's this idea that like genius is like a singular person as is a genius, and it's usually kind of a masculine trait. And I
Yeah.
feel like when you nurture and help,
Yeah.
it kind of detracts from it. And I that's in my personal experience,
Yeah.
that could not be further from the truth. I think when you give to a community, when you put your skills out and say, this is not about me, Sari, being a genius, because I'm absolutely not. And it's more that I am a sum of people who cared and loved and nurtured me. And then I'm going to share and love and nurture you. That's where I think like the real genius is, but our culture doesn't see it that way. They, like that's why we have this trope
Absolutely.
of like the boy genius who like has no social skills and they're mean to people, but they're a genius and they can get away with it.
Yeah.
It's so toxic. And so once I realized that that was what I was up against, it became really clear. I was like, oh, that's what I should be afraid of. Well, that's not true. So I'm just going to teach people and help people and be an amazing artist at the same time. Like it's the art world is weird, man.
Absolutely. But you're so true. I think I still remember while when I was entering, and I had always had this like art was always a hobby I would always do. I did not go to a formal art school, but ever since I was a child, I would take like several art classes, and then you know sometime oil painting, something. And I remember while I thought I wanted to pursue this seriously, and I thought, okay, maybe anytime I was stuck somewhere, and I saw this hesitance. In people that of course I don't see anymore in my own community, which is something that I'm very grateful for. People like you, people like Kat, and I know where to reach out to. And I saw this, but I did see this hesitance with people around me at that point, with something very little, something as obvious as very, very little for someone who may not have had that formal knowledge, but there was resistance of sharing knowledge.
Mm.
And it felt awkward to me because I felt like I was someone who would give away anything I knew, because I felt like, okay, I mean, knowledge is a tool for all of us. I mean, the same thing, the same tool, the same brush and paint, both of us could make something completely different. And even if we make something identical, it will still be Sari, and it would still be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that you're really, I think the art world does not has not had enough transparency, but thanks to of so many of us consciously making an effort to have more conversations, to have more of transparencies, so that more people can come in, more people can move forward,
Yeah.
and in a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so weird because like you would think the art world would be a little bit more progressive, but it's, like you were saying, like in different communities you saw people sharing, but the art world it's, and I want to clarify that, like, if you have a style and a process that you don't want to share, like you shouldn't have to share, but it's more that like the resistance I
Yeah.
came up on was like, I don't know, that like the fact that I was sharing and showing there's not secrets. It's just like a couple of, classical techniques. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But that the fact that I was sharing that devalued my work somehow. And I don't know, it's pretty bogus,
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoy it. And it's funny because like, selfishly, it's made me a much better artist because I've had to be very intentional. And like, I'm doing a series right now with like art history. And so I'm currently doing a painting study of Frida
Wow.
Kahlo. And like, if not for the incentive of
Wow.
like educating, I don't know that I would have gained these extra, tools. And, I think I'm a better artist for teaching, but I don't know. The world's weird. So
Okay, I have one last question before we get into the last round of this episode, which is something that I ask all my guests. I actually have more questions, but because of time, I
sure.
think we'll have to do this one more time.
Sure.
My last question is, if you had to do what you're doing even today, let's say if the world was falling apart and you had to choose to do what you're doing today again, what is that one reason that you would do? Why would you? What is that one reason that puts you out of bed and make you do what you do today,
Oh,
and
man.
still make you choose the same?
Gosh, sometimes that does not feel like a hypothetical. That feels like very much what I'm doing. The world is ending, and I'm still
Yeah.
choosing to paint. Um, gosh,
Yeah.
it's the big reason why I make art. I don't think I went into this super financially savvy or business savvy, and the reason I do it is because I'm I absolutely love it. I mean, I know that's not a very elaborate answer, but it's my absolute favorite thing in the world. I love that it's challenging. I love that no matter how good I think I'm getting, I turn a corner and I'm like, wow, I have a long way to go. I love that. I think our culture is so like, I don't know, what is it? Like quick, that we want stuff so fast. We want instant gratification on everything. And I love that painting is a long game. Like I love that I'll be 50 and think, okay, I have one more decade to get better. Like I love that. And I love
Yeah.
that.
I love that thought.
Yes, and it's so honest. Like I never paint anything that I don't absolutely want to paint. Like it's the most like, I don't know. I love it so much. I paint because despite the world feeling like it's burning, it feels like a really pure, helpful, loving, self-love thing to do, I guess.
Love that answer. I love that. And I think most of us do is because it is a fair answer. Like, because we are choosing to do this even now, because more than ever, because there's no other way. I
Mhm.
mean, there's no other way that we would want to do something.
Absolutely.
Love that. Okay, Sari, I want to say a big thank you. You've been so kind, honest, and wonderful, and I just can't say it enough. Thank you for being here and agreeing to spare your time. I really appreciate that. um,
Thank you.
like I said before we began, uh, this is the most favorite part of my of this episode. I always love this. I have a small rapid fire for you. It's a fun little rapid fire. It's You have to be quick. I'm going to ask some questions to you. Just give me what comes to your mind first. That's
Okay,
it.
sounds good.
Perfect. So should we do this?
Yeah, I'm excited. Oh my gosh.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
Um, okay, rapid. I'm so bad at rapid fire. I one thing. Okay, I would love to convey hope. I would love to convey. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Rapid fire hope.
Oh. What's that one word that describes you the best?
Colorful.
Love that. If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh man. Ooh. I would have it on a van or an RV so that I could bring it everywhere. I would love to travel. So I know that's like kind of subversing your question, but that's what I would like.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I think this is one of the most honest and best answers I've heard so far.
Oh.
And generally, I would say to my guests every time, I think in the last episode, I was also saying the same thing that, I now intentionally really want to ask this question to all my guests. And then I force myself that please, whatever part of the world you are, please invite me. So I think with you, I would have to tag along and literally go on several parts of the world.
Yes, we could do it. Make a caravan. I love it.
Oh, love that. It's like a dream. I'm sure you'll make that true. So yeah, again, I would invite myself. Please
Oh,
let me
yes.
know and
Please
invite
come.
me.
Yes.
Okay. Your biggest source of inspiration.
Oh, man.
One
One
word.
word. Humanity? I don't know. That seems so like if I only one word, I think it's just people's resilience and other artists, people making art despite feeling like the end of the world. People. I love them.
Okay. Who's your favorite women artist? Any point of time.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I changes every day, but right now I'm on a deep dive onto Frida Kahlo, and so I'm gonna have to say her. I just finished like two biographies about her, and she's everyone should deep dive into her. She's been so commercialized, but she is rich in history. So right now, Frida Kahlo.
Yeah. Okay. Who's your go-to person when you're in trouble or in need of advice?
Hmm. Man. Okay. The answer that came to mind is going to make me sound like so self-centered. I promise it's not. I've worked really hard to get to this point, but probably my mind whenever I'm meditating. And so like not me, not my ego, but like my quiet inner self.
Yeah.
You can call that God.
Yeah.
That's who I go to. But I have lots of
Yeah.
people I go to when I need to vent or talk. But if I could only have one person, I would cultivate that.
Love that. You're quite innovative actually now that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is a little more like you can take a few more
Okay.
words, but hear me out.
Gotcha.
Can you pinpoint like I'm sure there must have been several, but can you pinpoint like one moment of your career or like your art career where you felt like okay, you're just grateful to be an artist, like that one very special moment that you would always remember.
Oh man. Oh man, that's hard. Gosh, I could write like an essay on that. I mean, definitely I feel that every single day. Uh okay, okay. Okay. So okay, hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to think of like one exact moment. Um I think whenever I first I sat down with my husband, it was right before the pandemic, and we like crunched numbers and we're like, can we make this like a career? I think, there's lots of moments, and I certainly feel that every day, but whenever we were sort of looking at it and we're like, yeah, we can like, you can do this for real. And he contemplated stepping away from his job. I think that was pretty wild for me because I had never been really intentional with it. I sort of was like, okay, maybe it'll make money. Maybe I'll get notoriety. That's great. And then when I realized like, oh, like I was able to tell like little Sari, like, oh, it's okay, we made it. Like you're not, we're not in poverty. You're gonna be all right. Like that was a really, I think
Yeah.
I cried. So
Oh my God. Oh, that's so special.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
sure.
Okay. Shout out to an artist who's currently on your heart list slash you're loving.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, I remember people by their handles, so I'm trying to think. There's so many. I mean, if you want like a longer list, please go to my following list on Instagram. Okay, you know who I like right now? Can I say two artists? Is that okay? I have to have two.
Absolutely.
I'm really doing a deep dive into like fabric and reading a couple books on like fabric and how it shaped the world. One of them is my old classmate who was also an art major. Her name's Danielle Nielsen, and she is
Okay.
exploring themes of motherhood and circle and cloth and fabric in a really beautiful way. And the other artist, she's also on Instagram, and her name is Shiniqua, and she uses art, hair and weaving and weft and all of those things to make art. And so like right
Wow.
now, like I'm in the middle of writing a caption about how much they've inspired me and from a painting I'm doing. So it changes every single day, but right now those two creators are
Yeah, love that. I'm going to check them out and I'm going to link both of them in the show
Yes,
notes.
please
So
do.
if you're listening this episode, go check them out,
Yes,
please.
please do. Thank you.
Okay, my last question. As an entrepreneur, as an artist, what's that one advice that you would like to give people coming behind you?
Yes.
One word, two
Oh
words.
gosh. Okay. It's longer than 2 words, sorry. But make what you like.
No
Make
problem.
what you like. Make exactly what you like. I think an important thing that we don't talk about enough is how important it is to answer to yourself. Do you like this? Do you want to paint it? Is it interesting to you? We always think, ego. Are people going to like this? Is this going to do well? Is this going to sell? Sit down at your easel and just paint exactly what you like. It's the most liberating feeling. And it's the only reason I'm still a painter today, because the rest of the art world is crazy.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, I actually missed one question, so I have to ask you that because that's literally my favorite. So yeah, this one is for sure. I promise this is last.
Sounds good.
If you were to meet younger Sari today, what advice would you give her?
Oh, I would just say hang in there. It's gonna get better. Just hang in there. You're gonna be all right. I think I went through a really, really tough childhood, and I think if I had knew that this was on the other end, it would have saved me so many tears. So, hang in there.
Oh my God. You're doing great. You'll do great. I would say that to you, younger you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sari. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much. I had such a great time, and I can't be enough grateful to you. But I have, before I let you go, just one more thing. Is there any upcoming project, anything new that you would want to share with us and let the listeners know about? And where can they find you and how can they support you?
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for giving me this platform and this airtime. Yeah. So the best way to find me is Instagram, not Sorry Art at Instagram. That's kind of my home base. I also have my website. It's sari.studio, no .com. It's just sari.studio. If you sign up for my newsletter, you get deals that no one else gets. You get early access to drops and lots of other goodies. And then if you are interested in becoming a painter, if this podcast inspired you to pick up a brush, please check out Not Sorry Art School. It's linked in my link tree on my Instagram, or if you just type in Not Sorry Art School in Google, you'll find it. And it's a wonderful place to learn all the basics. Basically, I tell people it's like learning what everyone else learned in art school, all condensed into like 10 hours. So it's good stuff if you're interested in painting. And yeah, what I'm working on is a little bit of everything. I've got a bunch of launches and just regular painting shenanigans that you can see on Instagram. So thank you so much.
Love that. Thank you so much, guys. I will link all the links Sari has mentioned right now in the show notes. So just go to www.arts2heartsproject.com and you'll find the show notes on the homepage. You can go find Sari and everything that she does. So make sure you follow her. Make sure you check Not So Sorry Art School, and make sure you support and learn from Sari as much as you can, because I would totally recommend that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you again, Sari. I had a lovely time.
Yes. Appreciate you.
And I hope to speak to you soon, sometime soon again.
Yes, please have me back on. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you. I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.